At many companies, it can feel as if there are hundreds of miles between departments. As a unit is progressing through a process, whether it's a person or a request, it typically goes through multiple hands. And if these hands are not tightly coordinated, it can cause repetitive and significant problems. In small or startup organizations, the whole company typically starts out in the same team with a high degree of alignment and collaboration. And if they do it right as they grow, that collaboration continues throughout the organization. But that doesn't just happen through luck. That alignment is largely the result of conscious decision to work together, set goals, and create agreements as they grow. One of the most critical steps to ensuring that your newly improved process is successful is creating a service level agreement, or an SLA, to strengthen handoffs within the process. Traditionally, an SLA serves to define exactly what a customer will receive from a service provider. But SLAs serve internal operations as well, and these agreements are the most important. An SLA is a contract that establishes a set of observable behaviors or actions that one party has agreed to provide another. In this chapter, we're covering internal SLAs between one department that delivers a recurring service to another department within that business.
By this phase in an improvement project, you have just implemented a new way of working to solve a problem. In this module, we are focusing on the key moments between the steps in the process. Our processes succeed or fail most often in the moments between the steps defined in your process map, in the everyday processes that we use to get things done. These are the unspoken rules, how things get handled, the acceptable behaviors. In a team working in a newly improved process, these norms of behaviors are not well established, and there will be issues that surface. And these issues will cause productivity, quality, and relationships to suffer. For a new or newly changed process, there are not established rules or defaults for acceptable behaviors. Teams that do not put the effort in to address these issues create resentment among team members who have different standards of performance. They encourage mediocrity. They often miss deadlines and goals not achieved. And these issues put disproportionate pressure on leaders to address problems with discipline. So this is why things have to be spelled out. Expectations must be explicit and agreed upon.
Successful teams develop patterns of behavior that are agreed upon and practiced by team members. Over time, unspoken rules about who does what and how things in general will be handled start to emerge. These general expectations become the rules of engagements, and they define, sometimes without being explicit in any way, how the team operates. These are the guides to action for the team, the defaults. So even when faced with a new task or even a crisis, no time is wasted in deciding what roles people will play or how team members will interact. Successful teams that take responsibility stay on top of actions. They're not afraid to ask each other for updates. They identify problems quickly by questioning each other. They establish respect among each other because they hold themselves to the same high standards. They avoid excessive bureaucracy around management and corrective actions. A few important things to remember are that teams cannot be held accountable. Only individuals can be held accountable. And in order for service level agreements to work, people have to be open to feedback. And that feedback must be in the form of facts, not feelings.
The key to creating standards to aim for is focusing on observable behaviors. SLAs focus on observable and quantifiable behaviors. What do we mean by observable? It means that we must be able to see it and quantify it. It cannot be an opinion like saying, "You don't work with a sense of urgency." We have to be able to quantify it so that we can clearly communicate it better to someone else, and therefore we can do something about it. When an SLA exists between departments, it details observable behaviors. We ask ourselves, what does a sense of urgency look like? Think of examples and non-examples of the behavior. Identify where and when the behavior occurs. Ask why it's important that we improve that specific behavior. Now let's try a few examples. So instead of saying your team doesn't work with a sense of urgency, we ask ourselves, what does a sense of urgency look like? It might be responding within 24 hours. Think of examples of the behavior. For example, responding to email requests. Identify where and when the behavior occurs. It occurs when we request support for a client inquiry. And why is it important that we improve that specific behavior? It's important because it often makes or breaks our ability to deliver the product on time.
Another example. Instead of saying, "Don't be rude," we ask ourselves, what does not being rude look like? In this case, we have to dig a little deeper. The example of the behavior is that you roll your eyes every time I ask for help. Because this is a partnership agreement, we find that there are two sides to this issue. For example, I roll my eyes because people ask questions without completing the request form, and they interrupt me at the busiest time. So it turns out that the observable behavior that we'd like to see is to come prepared with a completed request form when asking questions. Now, let's identify where and when the behavior occurs. The behavior occurs after 3 p.m. when we're working on our daily deadlines. The standard is to come before 3 p.m. And why is this important that we improve the behavior? Because the interruptions and lack of information cause delays in completing deliverables.
Let's say that the initial problem is that one team is not considered to be team players. After discussing what this actually means, we identify the observable behavior that decisions that affect other areas are made without consulting those involved. We can turn this into an agreement that says, consult cross-functional teams when prioritizing daily schedule. Why? Because it often makes or breaks our ability to deliver the product on time.
One more example. One team thinks that the other does not take pride in their work. What's an observable behavior? They agree that there are too many mistakes made. Upon further discussion, the team making the mistakes clarifies that there are no guidelines for how to work for a specific customer. So the team agreement is that clear guidelines will be provided, and they will have a tight feedback loop to clarify questions and issues. This is important because the current level of mistakes is causing delays and customer dissatisfaction. The SLA template is provided for you to use for each agreement between the teams involved in your process. The two parties in the agreement are listed at the top. In our example, this agreement is between sales ops and the warehouse. The team agrees upon the most important handoff and flow issues between the teams or functions. Once the specific observable behaviors are documented, the team meets regularly, for example weekly, to provide feedback on how well we're meeting the requirements. In this example, sales ops agrees that they'll provide sales order accuracy. The warehouse team rates them on their performance to this standard. In this case, the warehouse team gave them a 1, which means that they sometimes meet the standard. The cells in the template provide drop-downs with the ratings of 0 for not meeting, 1 for sometimes meeting, and 2 for consistently meeting the standard. The teams have a productive dialogue about the challenges to meeting the standards, and they'll work together to solve problems and continually improve. The scoring at the bottom of the form provides a means for the teams to track their progress.
And here's your one-point lesson for SLAs for your project. As a part of the control phase, we are focused on creating SLAs to support our new improvement. While SLAs can become an integral part of all of our processes in a site or an organization, our focus here is on improving the behaviors that are needed to sustain success with our project results.